Good morning. Welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. We certainly have a nice personality this morning, Mrs. Busby, who owns 51% of this show. We'll take care of the introductions on that. First, as you might, both of you listeners out there might remember that I start Viewpoint with a kudo. So I think it's pretty generally known, Judy and I have said so on the airways here, on these two microphones we use, how much respect we have for Chief Paul Adams and his policemen at the Lincoln Police Department. A good example, the other day, I was sitting there reading the paper, and bang, bang, bang on the door came, and I come up, and there was two men sitting there with a police car. They were out of the police car, and the police car was parked in front of our place. And I was kind of surprised and wanted to know if anything was wrong. And they said, well, somebody dialed 911. So Mrs. Gossett's eyes failed her once again, unfortunately, and I mean that seriously. She has some problems. And she misdialed. And the point of I mentioned the whole thing is immediately there was some response on behalf of our city police department. So kudos to the two gentlemen who came out, very polite, very direct, and I sent Chief Adams an email the very next day because I appreciated the manner in which they handled that little goof by Mrs. Gossett and her telephone technique. So kudos to it once again, and a legitimate kudo to our Lincoln Police Department for being on the ball. Mrs. Busby?
You know, further on that, on the news last night, they were talking about a community who had decided that they were going to defund the police. We have this little movement going on in various communities. Well, it was successful. They defunded them, and they decided that calling the produce man at the grocery store when you have a robbery wasn't helping, you know. And they had a drive going now to refund the police. Now, there's somebody who had a come to Jesus meeting, right?
That sort of mentality is mind-boggling. You can't begin to conceive how anybody could be so bloody stupid as to defund their police department. And for what Federal Communications Commission would allow, I just said something else. But I like my job here. It gives me a little money to go to the downtown tap. Judith K. Why don't you introduce our lovely young lady this morning we have as our guest?
She's really very nice, and she's from some local Logan County families, aren't she?
She sure got some great Logan County blood, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, you betcha. Briann Titus is the Director of Agency Development with Community Action, and they have their annual... Am I wrong? No, what am I talking about?
No, he's talking about the fan being on. One track, just one track. We're not going on both tracks, Judith.
Testing.
Well, they carry on a meeting behind my back here, right in the room. Anyway, we're going to talk about Cheeseburger in Paradise and other community action activities. Community action is certainly a part of our community and has been for ever so long. And you're the Director of Agency Development, Briann.
Yes.
Now tell me, what does the Director of Agency Development do as a responsibility?
She tries to get money.
Yes, that is definitely one of the parts. Yeah. Yes. It's kind of a loaded question, I feel like. There's a lot of pieces and moving parts that go under my department and under my title. But fundraising is a big part of that. Bringing funds into the agency, whether that be through grant writing or just collecting donations, reaching out to different donors, etc. But that also is marketing, public relations, it's volunteerism. I do social media. I also manage our website. So there's just lots of moving parts in there. But at the end of the day, the fundraising and the branding and marketing of the agency are pretty much my top priorities.
May I ask a question about one thing?
Sure.
You mentioned grants.
Yes.
Writing a grant, as I understand it, is in and of itself quite an art.
Yes.
and grants not well written don't get much attention.
Not usually.
So I just doff my fedora in your direction. If you're a successful grant writer, you're doing a heck of a job for our department here.
That is definitely an art, researching the grant opportunities, what they're looking for. Unfortunately, some foundations limit the area in which they're funding, so that can become sometimes difficult. Last year, I did a ton of grant writing for COVID support specifically. So, and a lot of that in our situation was if we had to cancel our fundraiser last year, that was affected, COVID affected that. So being able to write grants to be able to recoup some of that loss of funds was helpful. But yeah, I mean, people are definitely out there and they want to support different projects. It's just finding what organization wants to fund what project. Some want to do food pantries and some want to help deliver homebound seniors meals. Some want to help with transportation. So it's just connecting all of the dots. But yeah, there is money out there. It's just a matter of going through the process and hoping that yours gets to the top of the pile.
Boy, when you talk about ducks in a row, you got a lot of ducks in a lot of rows.
Yep.
We raise money here too. They're called sponsorships.
Yep.
And we're going to recognize our sponsors right this very minute if I can get Mr. Rice sobered up here. Right back live in the studios here, high on the hill on County Road 2250, also known as Lazy Row. Our guest this morning, Briann Conradi, and I emphasize that because that gives her legitimate Logan County connection. Briann
Well,
Conradi,
Ritterbush will
Titus.
fit in there too.
Logan County cred.
Yeah.
So, Judith K., you had made yourself a couple of notes.
Well, when we were off the air, you were talking about being at your wits' end.
Yes.
Tell us about your wits' end.
Yes, so kind of a hidden gem, I guess, at Community Action. You start to discover all the things that are kind of hidden within our organization. But we actually have an online resale boutique that we call it, and it is actually called Wits End. And we used to have a store downtown Lincoln, but we have moved it back to our corporate office location, just because it's a little bit easier to maintain that way. And we have an online front that is all name brand clothing that we sell at thrift store pricing. So it's inexpensive. You're getting great pieces. We hand select the items that go on the website. And all of the funds that we raise through that program actually go back into Community Action and support our programming. So
Is this a pretty active part of your operation out there?
it is, yes. We have that, and then we have a small in-person thrift store also at the central office. So we have the online version and then the in-person version.
Now, where do you get your merchandise? Is it things that are gently worn? Is
Yes,
that it?
things that are donated. So people will come out to the agency and donate items of clothing if they've been cleaning out their closets or just cleaning out their homes in general. They'll bring it out to us, and then we go through all of it and make sure that it's in good condition, and then we put it out for people. It's interesting because, like I said, we do sell the items at a very low price because that money goes back into our programming.
Right.
But in situations that we have emergency situations, crisis situations, we do allow people to come in and pick out what they need. So if they've had a fire, we allow them to come in and get what they need. If we've got a baby that's just been put into foster care and the foster parents need some things for them, we allow them to come in and get what they need. So there are situations that we do not charge people for in emergency situations, but anybody can come out there. It's open to the public. Anybody can shop online. And I actually have an intern right now that is managing the online portion. She's a junior in high school. She's just going to finish her junior year, and she was in the Lincoln Land CEO program this year, and she has been interning for me and doing a fantastic job.
This is actually a hands up program as opposed to a handout program.
Yes, that's really our focus at Community Action, is trying to teach people how to deal with their challenges. We have a coaching staff that kind of helps them work through some of those challenges with them if they need that support. But even down to our food pantry, we do service emergencies if necessary, but we limit those because there are other resources in the community. So our food pantry, we encourage people to volunteer with our agency in order to earn time in the food pantry. So a lot of our organization is just focusing on what can we do to encourage you to take control of your life, deal with your situation, and move forward rather than keeping you in the cycle of poverty.
That's a different approach to things.
Absolutely.
And a smarter approach.
Yes.
How long have you had this thrust?
I would say probably the last 6-7 years. Our CEO and our executive director, she has always kind of had that thought process and that purpose. And so when she came on to Community Action, she wanted to change some things, and she felt like we needed to stop just giving people, the handout, so to speak, and really try to deal with the situation and the circumstances of poverty. So that's really been her mission this whole time, and we've just our leadership team follows into that mission, and we believe in that mission, and we follow alongside of her on that.
Hats off.
Yes.
You mentioned food pantries.
Yes.
As we speak, Holy Family's food pantry is active on Wednesday mornings. They and the other food pantries do a whale of a job. There must be, you and I, we walk down the streets and we're not aware, it's off of our radar screen, we're not aware of the fact there is, in fact, a lot of need by many people out there, or for many people out there. So let's just take our collective hats off to the food pantries that are so vitally needed and serve such a great void for some families who otherwise would go without basic food.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah, and it's been interesting with our turn on how we do our food pantry. Sometimes you have working parents or working adults that are working, but their budgets may be tight here and there, whether they have medical bills or whatever they're paying at that period of time, and they don't want to necessarily go to a food pantry just to pick up food. And so that's been attractive for them at our food pantry because they can volunteer their time, and then they can still help their household financially by bringing home food. And ours is set up in a grocery style setup, so they actually get to shop themselves. They get to actually pick the items that they want for their household, and so they can actually select items rather than just being handed certain things. We feel like it cuts down on waste because they're not just dumping the stuff they don't want.
Right.
And we have a new coordinator with that position, and she is really focused on healthy foods, bringing in more meal-oriented options. She's doing recipes and showing people, like, out of these items in our food pantry, you can make this recipe for your home. And so we're making sure we have produce and dairy and milk, eggs, not just snacks. We're really trying to make it more meal-oriented and really encouraging that family togetherness at home rather than just opening a snack and eating that.
There's some psychological factors that enter into this too, and Lord knows I'm not qualified to talk about that. Or maybe in a different way. But seriously, 648-5510. Our guest this morning is Briann Titus, representative of Community Action. Those of you who've been paying attention the last few minutes must understand that this young lady is serious about her job, Judith. She's obviously enthused about doing a good job and serving people's needs. So if you have any questions or comments, 648-5510. Briann Titus. Be happy to field your questions. And if you don't be nice to her, we'll cut you off.
There you go.
How long has Community Action been in action? Some time now, this old fellow says.
Yeah, I want to say it's been 1966.
My
I
goodness.
think is when
Is
we
that
started.
for just locally?
Yes.
Because I'm sure there was Community Action I'm thinking there were something like that
Because it used to
when
be
I was a kid.
It used to be CIEDC.
Yes, that's right.
And then it transitioned to Capsule.
Pardon?
Jane Plotner.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, Portner.
Yes.
Yeah, Jane Portner, thank you.
Yeah, so we've been going for a while, and we service 6 counties total, all rural communities. So even though our central or our corporate office is located here in Lincoln, we actually have several branch offices. I believe there's like 13 branch offices.
Well, you must
throughout
have
the county.
quite a staff.
Yeah, we have a little over 115 employees. So we have branches in all the counties, whether that be outreach staff, our energy assistance program, Head Start centers. So we're all over the place.
Let's talk for a minute about Head Start. You know, when they talk about education, so many times the Head Start program will
Yes.
come up as an integral part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we have early Head Start and Head Start. So we service birth to 5 with school readiness and getting them ready for kindergarten. And we actually did summer programming last year because we had to shut down due to COVID. And so we were one of the first Head Start programs in the area that actually opened during the summer, during the heat of COVID, to be able to serve these children. And we have continued in-person learning for the rest of the year. I believe this is their last week in class, which it went by really fast. But we really focus on the fundamentals. We focus on their development. We focus on getting them ready for kindergarten. It is a free program for eligible participants. And it's just, I don't know, it's just really great because the kids really get to be involved and interactive, and we have full day and half day programs. We also have in-home if that's what the parent prefers, but it is an all family idea. So we help the kid in the classroom, but we also get the parents involved and help them understand what their child is learning. We get them engaged in some of our self-sufficiency classes so that they can work on their situation and their challenges while we're helping the child. So again, just working to break that cycle of poverty before that Head Start child goes into the same cycle. We're trying to break that with the parents so that way that child has potentially opportunity to not be in that cycle. So it's a whole roundabout encompassing.
Well, it sure is.
Yes.
My goodness.
Yep.
And you start from brand new people?
Yeah.
Well, my goodness. Now, what does Head Start do to assist little tiny people?
A lot of it is just showing them care and love. I mean, especially if they're infants, showing them that there's a constant in their lives, helping them just with developmental stuff, playing with them, having them work with basic blocks and things like that. Just assessing them and doing what we can to make them feel safe and protected. That's a big thing when you're dealing with like the infant population, when you're doing those 0 to 3 people, that consistent care is what really makes them feel like they are that emotional development. And we also have a foster grandparent program within the agency. And so a lot of our foster grandparent volunteers are assigned to the Head Start classrooms. And we have one in particular who she loves being with the babies.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what she says every day. It makes her happy to go to her job, she calls it, because she gets to snuggle babies all day.
Yeah.
And when she's not there, she
Not
misses
a bad
her
day,
babies.
you have to admit.
Yeah.
This is fascinating to me, Judith. This is beyond my pay grade. Seriously. Daily, 5 days a week, a lot of good is being done in this community for people who really need some help.
Amen.
Yeah.
And pretty obviously, you have a mission out there at the... where your offices are out there on 5th Street up behind what we used to call the bowling alley.
Yes,
They're
we're
still
kind of
called-
hidden back there.
Kind
We
of
have
tucked away back there, yes.
Yes, but we have like our own little wildlife sanctuary back there. We talk about it all the time, so it's kind of fun. But yeah, we do have to kind of tell people, exactly where we're located so they don't miss us. But yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things that we do every single day that people don't fully understand. They connect with maybe the service that they've heard, or they connect with the service they've had to take advantage of before, and they don't necessarily see the whole picture. And of course, all of that requires funding. So whether that's state and federal funding, which we do rely on, but that's also the grant writing that I do to help with some of those funding gaps. And that's also why we have fundraisers and why we have the Cheeseburger in Paradise every year.
Let's talk a little minute about
Yeah,
that.
so it looks a little different than it has in the past due to COVID restrictions.
It has affected everybody in
Yep.
some way.
We had to
hasn't
cancel
it?
last year's event completely, which was a struggle. It's been going for 16, 17 years, and so having to cancel event was difficult. But this year we are able to host the event in person. We will be doing half of the capacity that we normally do. We're expecting around 250 people, which is under the restriction for the bridge program that went into effect last Friday. We will do a live auction with an auctioneer. We have auctioneer packages for that. And then something we're doing differently this year is we are taking our silent auction virtual. And so we are doing that online, and it is open to the public. So anybody and everybody can participate in that, and they can bid online for these options. There's going to be a little over 30 different items, and all of it can be done online, and it's going to be open. It starts May 26th at 7 a.m. and it will end June 4th, the day before the event. So they have a full week to be able to bid and hopefully get into a little bidding war and raise money for us at the same time.
Good deal. Good
Yeah.
deal. Now, how long have you been doing the Cheeseburger in Paradise? That goes back a little ways,
Yeah,
doesn't
like
it?
I said, I think it's almost been 16 or 17 years. I've been with the agency 5 years, and I've been involved with it from the beginning of my term there. But yeah, it was definitely something that had been started way before me. And it has evolved a little bit since then, to having new people in charge of it. We have evolved it a little bit, but it's just a fun event. It gets business people, community supporters out for the evening to support a great cause. We raise a lot of money. In the past, we've raised anywhere from $25,000 to $30,000 at that event.
That's a lot of dough.
Yes. So
Now, have you done it online before?
no, this
Well,
is the
that
first
ought
time.
to be a boost for you, surely.
Yeah, we're hoping so. And that link, like I said, it will go live May 26th, which is next Wednesday morning. And that link will be found on our website. So people will just go to the website, click the link, and it'll take them right there.
Well, elaborate a little bit there on what your website is and so forth so that people can
Yes.
get on board.
Yep. So the website is capsule.info, which is CAPCIL.info. And of course, it's robust with information. It has all of our program information, it has details about each individual program, all of our locations is listed. And then, of course, being able to click that link to go to that virtual online auction so they can participate in that. They can also make donations on our website if they want to donate towards a specific program or if they want to just donate in general. One thing I want to mention about that is a lot of people, they want to donate towards a specific program. So they say, I want to help the food pantry. So I want to make a donation to the food pantry, which is amazing and awesome, and we definitely appreciate that. But one of the things I stress to people when they make a donation to our agency is to make it just to the agency in general. And this is why. Because funding kind of gets messed up sometimes, coming down from the state or coming down from the federal government. And
No
sometimes,
kidding.
Yeah. Sometimes it's delayed, especially during the COVID pandemic. We saw lots of delays in funding. And we don't want to suspend our services because there's a delay in funding. So a lot of the fundraising that I do throughout the year, that money helps support those gaps in funding and keeps those programs going until the funding is received. And so when people make a donation to the agency in general, we can use that funding where it's most needed in any particular time rather than just for that specific program. Because once it goes to a specific program, we can't use it for anything else. And so if you donate to the food pantry, but yet our seniors need to be fed and we have a delay in funding there, we can't pull that money over. So that's one of the biggest positives of donating to the agency in general, because we push it to the program that is in the most need. Which is something I feel like is hard to understand sometimes, because we've got to make sure that our programs survive. And if there's a delay in funding, that could potentially cause a suspension of services, and we definitely want to avoid that at all possible costs.
I wouldn't worry about programs being suspended if everybody out there working under the same roof that you work under had the same enthusiasm and articulation for your job. I'm wearing a Texas hat vicariously, so I'm going to doff it in your direction as being, I can't imagine an employer that I know, Jim, and Judith, and listeners out there, both of you pay attention, who wouldn't be delighted to have an employee with the ability to articulate and show the same enthusiasm that Briann shows for her job. And so I'm serious about this. I'm not trying to stroke you at all. This is impressive to me. We've had people from the Community Action Program on before, but this young lady is a kind of Allison, pay attention. Pay attention, Allison. She's a cut above, and so I have a great course. She comes with that drive for doing a job well from the Conrad family.
There you go.
That goes back a long way.
It might be a little genetic. I'm sure my grandpa would say that. He was always the speaker and always was very good at communicating, involved in a lot of different things. And so I think that a little bit of that I get from him, for sure.
He was a special fellow.
Yes, yeah. Yes. We definitely, my kids really enjoy with him. So
sure, I bet.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back just a little minute to Head Start. COVID has affected everyone, whether they actually suffered from the disease or not.
Yep.
It's touched some part of our lives, and education has certainly been a big part.
Yes.
Of COVID's striking.
Yeah.
And one thing I think that we've learned is that young people, children, learn better in person because they learn more by being actually involved rather than doing it online.
Yes.
Because they have to learn when they're awfully little how to get along with other people in the world, because there are other people in the world.
Yeah. And it's funny because we were just talking about this yesterday during our staff meeting. Parents, not all parents are teachers.
Right.
And,
Amen.
a lot of us chose not to be a teacher for whatever reason. I am not a teacher. And so when it comes to online learning and helping children through that process, it does become difficult. And when some of our Head Start children, they have parents that are probably working, sometimes single parents that are working multiple jobs, or parents that maybe also did not have a higher education. So, it's even more difficult for them, and a lot of maybe don't have access to internet access or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And so we really had a plan from the beginning when we started the summer programming that these kids are coming to school in person. Yes, they wore masks in class, but we wanted them to be in class in person so we could have that attention, we could give them the attention that they needed, and not put more pressure on the parents. I can speak from personal experience. I have 2 children that are in elementary school, and I know why I was not a teacher. And
Well, hearing that, I would immediately stood up and pay attention because I think she'd make a whale of a teacher.
Yeah, really.
Well, I appreciate that, but my fourth grader, I know nothing, and when it comes to math, I absolutely know nothing. But it's interesting because I think we've learned that they don't teach things the same way they did at different times.
Oh, you're right.
So with the math that they're doing now is not the math that I did, and so I struggle with that because I'm like, well, this is how I would get the answer, and I'm totally wrong. That's not how we do it. So
I always just had to do the problem and say, well, there's the answer. Now you work that until you come up with
Yes,
that. Because it changes.
Absolutely. So yeah, my fourth grader tells me I know nothing. Having a bachelor's degree has no play in her world. But my kindergartner really thrives on that interaction, which I'm assuming that younger generation does. So you're looking at the Head Start children, they thrive on that interaction. They thrive on the ability to have friends and make friends, and they learn and develop during play and interactive play. And it's hard to do that when you're at home.
Yes.
Even if you have siblings, I noticed that my kids do not want to be around each other more than they have to be when it comes to remote learning. They love each other, but wow, it gets a little old after a while. And so having that different interaction, and like you said, learning to get along with everybody, learning to be kind to everybody, which of course we could use a lot more in our world. And so that's important to have that safe place and to have that interaction with those kids, and that's how they're going to develop. It's not necessarily all about the math and the reading and the science. Sometimes it is about the interaction and the development emotionally.
And you can't make friends with a computer. I don't care how smart you are.
No. And we always talk about how technology is hurting our generations that are coming up because they're on their phones all the time, or they're on the iPads, and that's, unfortunately COVID has made them become more reliable on technology rather than less reliable.
Yes.
So that's interesting. I mean, both of my kids, like I said, I have a kindergartner and a fourth grader, and they both have school iPads, that they do a lot of their work with. So, it's one of those things, but they also need to be grown up with technology because that's where the world is.
Yes, the person in charge of home teaching for my great-grandson said he wasn't very computer literate.
Yes.
And I'm sure that he's not the only one. But he said, Liam taught me.
Yes, I know. My mom had to help with a little bit of the remote learning, and she really relied on my kids to show her how to use it.
Exactly, sure.
But she learned a lot from that. So... and we talked a lot about COVID today and how it affects different things. One of the things that we have a new program that we're working on that just started on Monday, and COVID and the pandemic have affected our landlords in our area.
Oh, yes.
So a lot of them, they're not evicting their tenants for unpayment, and a lot of our tenants probably, are unable to pay their rent or unable to pay it in full. And so we actually applied for a grant and received that grant through the Illinois Housing Development Authority, and it is an Illinois rental payment program. So, and this is focused on landlords specifically. So we are actually having the landlords apply for funding, and they can actually be eligible to up to $25,000 per rental unit.
Wow.
And it can be up to 15 months of assistance. So these landlords that have been so gracious to these tenants and allowed them to stay and not evicting them, they still have bills to pay. And this is a way that we can kind of, this program is to help them out, put them better in a financial situation, hopefully, thank them for being gracious to their tenant during this period of time. And so this is a program that we're working on right now. That's going to be a temporary program, but something that we're working on. Yes, hopefully. As of right now, it is we have a portal that we have to go through for the application process, and it will be open for 3 weeks. I believe it ends June 6th. And then at that time, depending on how many applicants there has been and how many funds have been dispersed, they will decide if they want to open the portal again for another 3-week section.
They being whom?
The Illinois Housing Development Authority. I want to make sure I get that right. but that we are not the only organization in the state of Illinois that is doing this. And I believe the total amount that will be dispersed through the state is, I think, $5 billion.
It probably has to be billion. There
Yeah.
are a lot of people that are affected.
Yes. So we're not the only organization, so it really just depends on how many applicants. The interesting and kind of the cool part about this program is that it is a dual-sided application. So we do have to have the landlord and tenant information. So we are hoping that that would encourage some of the communication between the two parties, especially if there is any tension between them. But we are also a facilitator of the program, so we can also help mediate that conversation. So if there is some tension between the landlord and the tenant, or the housing provider and the tenant,
Which could happen.
yes, we can actually help facilitate that conversation. We can help mediate that conversation, but we do want to encourage them to communicate together, because both parties are required to be involved, and both parties are required to provide us with documentation before the application can be submitted. So it does take both people.
Well, and that's a smart way to do it, because I think these programs kind of began to assist one side and overlooking the other.
Because we had a disaster relief program in 2020 that we helped facilitate, and that was really more tenant oriented. That was the person that couldn't help pay their rent because they were directly affected by COVID, whether that be loss of job or loss of income, or they had to stay home because they were actually sick and had COVID. So that was more tenant focused, and this really is landlord or housing provider focused this time. And so we thought this was going to be a great opportunity to have a different program that helped a different person, but still helped focus on that rental assistance area.
Briann, speaking, excuse me, Judith, you go right ahead.
Hit it.
Okay. Speaking of such mundane matters as money, economics, I'm sitting here trying to think how to get people to send an extra check to or community action. Uncle Sam saw the fit that we all get $1,400 or whatever it is, and some of us don't need that. Some of us do need it badly, and that's another story. But for those folks who are in a more fortunate position, don't really need that money, you might want to share that. Maybe $100 if nothing else.
Yeah.
How would we send a check to community action?
Absolutely.
And another thing I would like to suggest is the funeral director is assisting a bereaved family, and they're kind of lost to what suggests as memorials. It's not inappropriate to consider community action.
Right, exactly. And actually, my grandmother, we talked about her earlier. She had passed in February, and Capsule Transit actually helped get her back and forth to dialysis and to some of her appointments. And that was one of the memorials for her, was giving back to our agency. So, that was something that my mom and my uncles were super happy with, because it did make sure that she got there safely, and it took some pressure off of them because they were also working. But yeah, stuff like that is very important to us. We're thankful for that. Easy way to do that. And there's several ways that we can receive donations. So checks can be mailed to the central office agency, which is at 1800 5th Street in Lincoln.
1800 5th Street in
Yep.
Lincoln, Illinois, 62656.
Yep. And they can be mailed there, and then they can also do it online. So we have an opportunity for them to donate online through PayPal. They do not have to have a PayPal account. They can actually use just a Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, any major credit card. But it does go into our PayPal account. So people get confused because they're like, well, if I don't have PayPal, I can't make a donation. Yes, you can. You can just use a credit card to do that. And they can even just bring the check or donation to the agency at any time. So lots of different ways. Of course, participating in the virtual auction that will go on next week will help as well. And then on our website, we're going to actually be we have the capacity to do monthly donations. And so that will be a new campaign that will be starting after Cheeseburger is over. But Partner in Action, so become a Partner in Action by making a monthly donation to the agency. And we have the ability to set that up to where it'll be an automatic deduction monthly, so you don't have to remember to write the check every month. But I can't stress enough that I know that people are struggling in some ways of life right now financially because of the pandemic, but nonprofits are also struggling in some ways. So I can't stress enough the importance of giving back and making donations to nonprofits in general. And like you said, it doesn't always have to be a large donation. $25, $50, $25 monthly, $100. I mean, we get wide ranges of donations, and we are so heavily involved in the community that keeps us going. We have the Work Camp for Lincoln program starting in July that we are actually helping with. So that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, really.
There's so much.
Yes, there is so much. Tell us what your website is that people can look up and find out the whole list of activities that go on at Community Action in case they want to choose a particular program, for instance, Head Start over senior transportation or vice versa. Absolutely. Or what have you.
So capsule.info is our website. It's capcil.info, and that will show you everything that we do and then some. And then we also have a pretty robust Facebook page that I help manage. So that is updated daily with new posts, new programs, new updates. So that's also, if somebody is on social media and does have a Facebook page, that's a great place to go because it is super current and tells you all the things that we're doing in real life time. And then our website is a great segue to go into kind of the broader perspective of what we're doing.
I can't imagine how you keep all the balls in the air.
Some days are more difficult than others.
I'm sitting here, Judy, thinking we've had a lot of guests each week, and we've been privileged to have those guests, and we appreciate their presence. Briann Conrady Titus is probably the most articulate guest we've had. Rose and Ben, be real proud of your granddaughter. We thank you very much for appearing with us. Allison paid good attention. We had a great guest this morning. Thank you very much, Briann.
Thank you for having me.